chosen one, there is something I need to ask you. And I need you to answer it honestly. Not the answer you give to the world. Not the explanation you have rehearsed over the years to make people comfortable. The real answer. Have you ever sat at a table, surrounded by your own family, the people who share your blood, your name, your history, and felt completely, utterly alone? Not just different. Not just the quirky one, or the quiet one, or the one they lovingly tease for being too sensitive, but genuinely, fundamentally, inexplicably alone. Like you were somehow placed in the wrong family by mistake. Like everyone else received a manual for belonging that was never delivered to you. Like there is a frequency humming inside you that nobody in that room can hear. And you have spent your entire life turning the volume down, trying to match their frequency instead, exhausting yourself in the attempt, and never quite succeeding. You look at them and you see people you love, genuinely love. But loving someone, and feeling understood by them, are two completely different things. And the understanding has never quite arrived, has it? You were the one who asked questions nobody else thought to ask. The one who felt things nobody else seemed to feel. The one who looked at the world and saw layers, dimensions, meanings beneath the surface of ordinary moments, that left everyone else looking at you with that familiar expression. That mixture of confusion and mild concern. That gentle suggestion that maybe you think too much, that you feel too deeply, that you need to relax. Just be normal. Just enjoy things the way everyone else does. And you tried. God knows you tried. You watched what they watched. You laughed when they laughed. You showed up to every gathering, every holiday, every Sunday dinner, performing a version of belonging that cost you something you could not name. But underneath the performance, underneath the carefully managed version of yourself that you presented to keep the peace, there was always that quiet, persistent, aching awareness. I do not belong here. Not in a hateful way. Not in a way that means you love them less. But in the way that an eagle raised among chickens eventually looks up at the sky and knows, without being told, that it was made for something those around it were not built to reach. You felt that. Since childhood, you felt it in the way your imagination ran further than the conversations around you. In the way injustice disturbed you more deeply than it seemed to disturb everyone else. In the way you could feel the unspoken emotions in a room before a single word was exchanged. In the way you grieved things that others barely noticed. In the way you celebrated things that others considered insignificant. You were calibrated differently. And no amount of trying, no amount of shrinking, no amount of editing yourself into a more palatable version could change that fundamental calibration, because it was not installed by your environment. It was installed before you arrived in it. And today, God is finally telling you why. Take a breath, because what comes next is going to settle something inside you that has been restless for as long as you can remember. You did not fail to fit in with your family. Your family was simply not designed to contain what God placed inside you. There is a difference. A container that is too small for what it holds is not a broken container. It is simply the wrong size. And you, beloved, were never the wrong size. You were placed in a container that was always going to feel too tight. Not as punishment, not as a mistake, but as the specific, intentional, divinely orchestrated beginning of a story that required exactly that tension to generate the pressure that would eventually reveal what you are made of. Because diamonds are not formed in comfortable environments. They are formed under pressure, in darkness, in the specific conditions that feel most like imprisonment, and are actually most like transformation. You have been in the pressure chamber, and what is emerging from it is something your family of origin never had the capacity to recognize, because they were not given eyes to see it, not because they are less, but because they were assigned a different role in your story. They were the pressure. You were the diamond being formed. And now, the formation is reaching its completion. There is something God needs you to understand about the family you were born into that will change the way you see every confusing, every painful, every isolating moment you experienced within those walls. Your family did not misunderstand you because they were cruel. Most of them were not cruel. They misunderstood you because they were operating from a completely different spiritual frequency. And frequency mismatches are not moral failures. They are design differences. Think about a radio. If you are tuned to FM, and everyone around you is broadcasting on AM, it is not that the signal does not exist. It is not that what you are receiving is invalid. It is simply that the receivers around you were not built to pick up what you are transmitting. You have been transmitting on a frequency that your family's receivers were never calibrated to detect. And the loneliness of that, the specific loneliness of being surrounded by people who love you but cannot hear you, is one of the most quietly devastating experiences a human being can carry, because it does not come with the clean grief of obvious rejection. Nobody threw you out. Nobody explicitly told you that you were unwanted. In fact, many of them tried. They showed up in the ways they knew how. They loved you in the language they had available to them. But love in the wrong language still leaves you hungry. And you have been quietly hungry for a very long time. Hungry for someone in your bloodline to look at you and truly see you. To recognize what is inside you without you having to explain it. To celebrate the very things that made you different, instead of gently, or sometimes not so gently, trying to correct them. You wanted your mother to see the depth in you and call it beautiful instead of exhausting. You wanted your father to look at your sensitivity and call it strength instead of weakness. You wanted your siblings to include you in their world instead of treating you like a guest in a house where you technically lived. You wanted to be known by the people who were supposed to know you first. And when that knowing never fully arrived, something in you made a quiet decision, a decision you may not have even been conscious of making. You decided that the absence of their recognition meant something was wrong with you. That if the people closest to you could not see your value, perhaps the value was not really there. And that decision, that one unconscious conclusion drawn from years of feeling unseen in your own home, became the wound beneath all other wounds. The one that taught you to shrink before you were rejected. The one that made you edit yourself before anyone else could criticize you. The one that whispered, even in rooms full of people who genuinely loved you, you are too much. You are too different. Nobody is going to understand this part of you. Hide it. And so you hid it. For years. Decades perhaps. Carrying the most extraordinary parts of yourself in a locked room inside your spirit. Only opening the door in private. Only letting those parts breathe when you were completely alone. Because alone was the only place they had ever been safe. But God is standing at that locked door today. And He is not asking you to open it for the people who caused you to close it. He is simply asking you to open it for Him. Because He needs to show you what is actually in that room. Not through the distorted lens of people who lacked the capacity to understand it, but through His eyes. The eyes that designed what is in that room. The eyes that placed it there intentionally. The eyes that have been watching you guard it, and protect it, and almost forget it existed, with a tenderness that would break you open if you felt it fully. Because what is in that locked room is not the liability your family's silence told you it was. It is an asset, a rare one, the kind that does not appear in every generation of a bloodline, the kind that skips, and waits, and sometimes sits dormant for decades, until the specific person arrives who was built to carry it without being destroyed by it. That person is you. You were not born into your family by accident, and you were not born different from them by accident either. There is a specific reason that God placed an eagle in a nest of sparrows. And the reason is not about the sparrows. It was never about what they could not give you. It was always about what you were being prepared to carry, that they were never meant to understand. Because here is the truth that the loneliness was trying to prevent you from seeing. The things that made you different from your family are not character flaws that slipped through the divine quality control. They are features, deliberately installed, precisely calibrated, specifically designed for a purpose that extends far beyond the walls of the house you grew up in. Your emotional depth is not oversensitivity. It is the capacity to feel the pain of people you have never met and translate it into something that heals them. Your inability to accept shallow explanations for deep things is not stubbornness or pride. It is the intellectual hunger of someone who was built to go further than the current understanding. and bring back discoveries that change the landscape for everyone who comes after. Your restlessness in environments that others find perfectly comfortable is not ingratitude or discontent. It is the internal compass of someone whose assignment lies beyond the borders of their origin, pulling them forward, even when forward feels terrifying. Your sensitivity to injustice, your inability to look away from suffering, your compulsion to ask why when everyone else accepts because. These are not burdens. They are callings wearing the disguise of personality traits. And your family, who were assigned the role of your origin and not your destination, did not have the blueprints to recognize what they were looking at. So they named what they could not understand with the only vocabulary available to them. Too sensitive, too intense, too serious, too much. But God, who wrote the blueprints, has different names for every single one of those things. And today, He is replacing their vocabulary with His. Beloved, this is the moment everything shifts. Not someday. Not when you finally find the right people. Not when your family eventually comes around. Not when the world finally catches up to what you carry. Right now. In this moment. As these words move through you like a current finding its natural path. Something that has been misnamed for your entire life is being renamed. And renaming changes everything. Because the name you give something determines how you carry it. If you carry your sensitivity as a flaw, you spend your life apologizing for it, hiding it, managing it, trying to reduce it to a level that makes other people comfortable. But if you carry your sensitivity as a gift, you spend your life deploying it, sharpening it, offering it to a world that is desperately starving for exactly what you have been taught to suppress. The difference between those two lives is not talent. It is not opportunity. It is not even faith in the traditional sense. It is simply the name you give to what God placed inside you. And today, God is renaming everything. That thing your family called too emotional. God calls prophetic perception. The ability to feel what others cannot yet articulate. To sense the undercurrent beneath the surface of situations. To grieve losses before they are acknowledged. And celebrate breakthroughs before they are visible. That is not weakness. That is a gift so rare, so precise, so specifically calibrated for the assignment ahead of you, that it required an entire childhood of being misunderstood to protect it from being diluted by the opinions of people who could not carry what you carry. That thing your family called too serious, God calls depth of purpose. The refusal to be satisfied with surface living. The inability to invest your full self in things that do not matter eternally. The constant pull toward meaning, toward substance, toward conversations and connections and callings that carry actual weight. That seriousness was never your problem. It was your protection. It kept you from wasting yourself on things that would have consumed your energy without advancing your assignment. That thing your family called too different. God calls set apart. And set apart is not a polite way of saying rejected. Set apart is a declaration of specific purpose. In Scripture, the things that were set apart were not the ordinary ones. They were the ones designated for holy use. The ones deemed too valuable for common purposes. The ones reserved, not because they were flawed, but because their function required preservation. You were set apart from your family's frequency, not because you were rejected by heaven, but because you were reserved by it, reserved for a specific use, a specific voice, a specific impact that cannot be generated by someone who fits comfortably into every room they enter. The world does not need more people who fit. The world desperately needs the ones who don't. The ones who look at what everyone accepts as normal and feel that deep internal resistance that says, this is not right. This is not enough. There is more than this. I was made for more than this. That resistance, that holy dissatisfaction, is not a personality disorder. It is a divine assignment wearing the costume of discomfort. And now that you understand what you have been carrying, now that the names have been corrected, now that the wound of family misunderstanding has been reframed by the one who designed you before your family ever held you, there is something God needs you to do. Something that will feel simultaneously terrifying and liberating. He needs you to stop waiting for your family to validate what he has already confirmed. This is the hardest part, because the hunger for family recognition is perhaps the deepest hunger a human being carries. It precedes every other longing. Before you wanted the world to see you, you wanted your mother to see you. Before you needed professional validation, you needed your father's eyes to light up when you walked into the room. Before you craved belonging anywhere else, you craved it at the table where you first learned what belonging was supposed to feel like. And the absence of that validation created a wound so foundational that you have been trying to fill it with every other form of recognition ever since. But beloved, hear this with your whole heart. The validation you needed from your family was never theirs to give, not because they withheld it maliciously, but because they did not have it. You cannot receive a specific frequency from a receiver that was never built to transmit it, and waiting for them to one day tune to your frequency has been keeping you standing at a station while your train has been ready to depart for years. It is time to board, not in bitterness, not in the dramatic declaration of someone who has finally given up on people who hurt them, but in the quiet, dignified, deeply peaceful decision of someone who has finally understood that their origin was never their destination. You came from them, but you were not made for them. You were made for something that their understanding could not contain, and their love, however imperfect, however misaligned with what you actually needed, was simply the starting point, the launch pad, the specific resistance that taught your wings how to push against the air. Eagles do not learn to fly in nests. They learn to fly by leaving them. And the leaving is not a betrayal of where you came from. It is the fulfillment of why you were placed there. Your bloodline is different, not because you are superior to the people you share it with, but because something was placed in your specific strand of that bloodline that was not placed in the others. A calling, a frequency, a specific spiritual DNA that was engineered for a purpose that extends beyond your family, beyond your generation, beyond anything that the walls of your childhood home could have prepared you to fully imagine. And that calling is activating now, right now, in this season, in this specific chapter of your life. The years of feeling like you did not belong were the years of being prepared to belong to something larger. The loneliness at the family table was the training ground for the table you are being invited to now.